tell me about chapter 3 then. I was grading your chapters 1 and 2, and most of you seem to be big fans and you're learning useful stuff, and that's good. And some of you are already saying to keep the textbook, you're like, that's awesome. Some people say you hate it, that's fine. But this always happens, but like that was chapter 1 and then chapter 2, and then there's some people who love chapter 1 who didn't like chapter 2 as much, and other people like chapter 2 is so much better and stuff, so always different opinions. But chapter 3, what was useful in that?
I like how it gave multiple examples of like the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like right off the bat, like they explained claim in so many different ways.
Yeah. Did you end up really clear about claim, evidence, and warrant? How clear are you on that? Did it feel pretty solid about that? Okay, good. I'm going to go over that really briefly again today, and you tell me if there's anything new. Anything else in chapter 3?
I thought that the essay from the Sadgers, is that how you say it? Sadgers? I thought that essay was really interesting, especially because I'm studying elementary education.
Yeah.
So
that always helps if you're interested in what you have to read. Good.
What was that comment?
She liked the essay on
gender bias in classrooms.
Yeah.
Elementary classrooms.
How many of you did that make you think? Did that make you wonder about if it happens to you in your classroom? Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't. I mean, the evidence they had was, well, we developed our own evidence. We decided that this meant that. I had a hard time, believing that.
Yeah.
How are you backing this up?
Because you want to know more details about it. Good. So, did they establish who they were, that they're reliable enough to kind of make up for the fact that they did not explain their methods? I haven't read it for a long time.
After 20 years, they were the experts at it, so believe that.
Yeah. Even people who are experts, you can't always believe in these days anyway. So. Do you guys like the essays overall in the chapters? They help?
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah. Sometimes you say they make it more confusing or something.
Sometimes they're too long. And
Yeah.
Lose interest.
Yeah.
Like in chapter 8, there was some really long ones.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like they add a few at the end, and by then you've already kind of got it. You've already done a few essay examples. You don't really need any more.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
They'd probably be useful if we spend time discussing them in class or something like that. But, yeah.
Well, and sometimes I learn like things that I like. Oh, for example, in that gender bias one, I liked how, and like you told us to do this. That's something I haven't already heard. But I like how she pointed out a barrier, because at the I wrote this in my little thing, but right at the beginning I said, I'm not totally sure if this applies, because like the time frame that they were talking about this was like in today's day and age. I honestly said, I don't know if this applies. And then towards the end, after they started saying like little examples here and there, which I agree they weren't very well backed, but like after listening to those, and then she straight out says, most people don't even recognize it. And then I started thinking, right off the bat, I said no, but now like she, for people like me, she said, you probably don't recognize it. And so then I was like, so is it not happening, or am I just unaware of it?
Yeah.
So it made me think.
Yeah. I bet most teachers are unaware of it too. Definitely not true with all teachers, I'm sure, but still. Anything else in chapter 3 worth remembering? How many of you annotate your chapters?
See, I thought it was funny that the textbook, like, specifically requested that.
Yeah.
I thought that was not considering your audience. Because if you're writing a textbook, you're writing to college students or people who are taking school, right? What do most people do? Rent a textbook or plan to sell it after they've used it. Annotating a textbook devalues the textbook. So he wasn't considering his audience when he wrote that.
Or at least there's one more consideration. So how many of you don't annotate your textbook because you can't sell it back for as much?
Yeah.
Okay, and I've heard that before, and I'm sure that's common. One solution we thought of last winter was you could use little Post-it notes to scribble notes in, and stick it on there, then it's not permanent. Or do it with a black light pen. Okay. That'd be more trouble than it's worth. But, yeah, so it's up to you. If you think you're going to learn more from it, and that's your value more than selling it back, good. Too bad they don't sell the old $4 version anymore, so you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, so some of you got the good one. Good. That helps. Paying $70 for a book, though, that's like a crime anyway, so I don't blame you.
Well, for me, it's also, it depends on the subject, because I know I need help in the subject.
Yeah.
And so I am annotating, because I'm like, well, I need as much help as I can get. So this book wasn't as expensive as like my psychology book.
Yes.
So I'll keep this one. And I'll use it because I know I need help in this. But another subject, it's like, yeah, sell it back.
Good. And if you annotate it, you actually look back at it as your own papers, it will help. Paying tuition anyway, might as well lose another $70 or whatever it was. Anything else on chapter 3? How about chapter 8?
It was really long.
Yeah? Oh, you noticed.
I did.
The first few pages seemed really repetitive, like you did the exact same triangle thing and explained it in the last class period, and so it seemed really repetitive and hard to get through the first part.
How many of you are doing the thing where you read the first 2 sentences of a paragraph, and if you really know it, skip ahead? Is it ever hard? Or you feel compelled to read it anyway, like out of habit sometimes? Hopefully it's because it's interesting. Good. Anything else about chapter 8? No?
I haven't read it yet.
Okay. Tell me one useful thing you learned in chapter 8, besides the rhetorical triangle.
I like the triangle thing. It helps me. That's how I visualize things.
Yeah.
Just kind of like draw it out, and I can remember that stuff when I actually see a picture of it, instead of trying to read it through it in a paragraph or something.
Good. They do that a few times in the text, and I know where they are because all my students pointed out. Eventually, you guys are going to hit the shish kebab metaphor, and probably a lot of you will mention that in your chapter reviews as something memorable. So maybe they should do that more often. Maybe you should do it when you write papers. All right, then. Next, in a minute, we're going to look at some sample rhetorical analysis papers, and we'll actually critique, and I'll tell you even more specifically how to build this one to just knock it out and make it awesome and get a good grade on this assignment. And before we do, though, I want to go over arguments, what arguments are a little bit. And I can't remember if we mentioned this really briefly last time, I believe, but not in much detail. So first off, do you know the 3 components of an argument?
Is that the claim, evidence, and warrant?
Yeah. So I'll give you some examples. We'll talk about these a little bit. But first thing I want to mention, and I'll try and mention it several times so it sticks in your head, is when you build an argument, first off, in the rhetorical analysis, when you have each argument, make each one its own paragraph. So it's easy to spot each argument. Set each one in a paragraph. And you'll have a claim and an evidence and a warrant for each one of those. And I'll also ask you to not put the evidence first. Start with either the claim, that's probably the most common, or the warrant. Now, why would I ask you not to put the evidence first?
You need to know what you're supporting.
Exactly.
Support it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really common for students to write this way. They'll put a quote, their evidence, and then they'll explain it. But what does that do to the reader? As they're reading the quote, before you've explained it, what are they thinking?
They're developing their own opinion.
Yeah, they could be developing their own opinion about it. Kevin?
Yeah, like they're interpreting it. So then if
Yeah.
you make your claim, it might not match up. So
Right.
you're kind of losing them.
Well, like how you said you want to say the big hairy dog was running around the yard.
Right. The same with, yeah, those phrases. Exactly. Even what you guys said is totally right, but even more common, people will read the quote and they won't even know what to make of it, and they'll be a little bit confused. Because a lot of times they'll pull this quote out of your article and it's a little bit dense or something, and they'll read it and they'll have to think really hard if they want to process it at all. And then they get to your claim and warrant. How many of them do you think will go back and read your evidence now they know what to do with it? It depends. If they really want to understand your paper, they'll go back and check it out. You know, if they have to grade it, they'll go back and make sure it matches and all that. But you're making them work harder that way. So put usually your claim first, and then your warrant or evidence interchangeable. Sometimes it works better one way, sometimes another. But I just realized that whole thing about not putting your claim first last year sometime. But I think it's important. I think it's really helpful. So no evidence first. Do you remember from chapter 8 what are the different types of claims?
Claim of value, claim
Claim
of
of fact.
fact.
Policy and claim of fact.
Yeah, and policy. Good. Is it helpful to know, to see a claim and understand which type it is? Why is it helpful, Heather?
Well, it makes you more able to address the way the writer is writing. I mean, if you're dealing with an emotional writer who is approaching a claim of value,
Yeah.
you have to evaluate what their value system is and approach it that way. It's an emotionally based argument.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with someone who is writing a claim of fact, they have that kind of personality type that they're going to address facts and respond to facts. If you respond with an emotional argument, they'll disregard you entirely.
Yeah. Good. Well put. And so not only for your readers, but for yourself, processing their ideas and deciding whether to accept them, it's kind of useful to see what basis to evaluate them on. Was it clear with their little examples in the box early in the chapter? Was it clear which type of claim each one of those examples was? Good. Usually my students get a little hung up on it, but maybe Unite School students are smarter than them. Some of them are like, why isn't there an answer key? And some of them are a little confusing, and oftentimes they overlap. There'll be like two different types kind of blended, or they're kind of close together. Let me tell you one other type of claim that they didn't list in there that I think belongs there. Cause and effect. And I don't know if that falls under, for them, maybe they're thinking that falls under a claim of fact, but I think it's important enough, especially as you're talking about government policy and stuff, and you know the big issues going on in our nation today, that cause and effect claim is quite common. And so again, if you're aware that someone's making a cause and effect claim, you can evaluate whether you think that's a true, cause and effect, if one action really will cause the other. Because when people are so extreme today in their claims, if we do this, we'll all blow up and go to hell, and your eyes will melt in your head. You can say, oh, cause and effect claim. I don't buy it. It's unknown. Need more evidence, kind of stuff. So I think that's a really useful one to be aware of. Did the book point out that claims are opinions? Okay, good. So what about claims of facts? Are those opinions?
Oh, well,
Everything's
yes and no.
Tricky question, right? I mean, if it's a fact or not, whatever the truth is out there with capital T, that's one thing. But the minute you assert it, it makes it your opinion. You believe that kind of thing. I think it's useful to understand that claims are opinions so that you can always know that when you hear somebody's claim of fact, you can still evaluate and decide whether you accept it or not, or whether you need more evidence or reasoning or support. Also, it reminds you that you may state a fact and you may think it's the hard truth, guns don't kill people, whatever, but it's your opinion, and other people who you're talking to might not accept it, and so it'll remind you to support your claims, even if you think it's obvious. All right, did you talk about the different types of support?
Yeah, sources.
Yeah, so sources like appeal to authorities, right?
Yeah,
Like quotes and stuff.
Accurate, relevant.
Oh yeah, so good ways to evaluate them. Recent, if it matters. We're talking about Shakespeare, it doesn't matter so much. But if we're talking about technology, it definitely matters. So you can quote authorities, you can reason it out, explain, so it makes sense to people, you know, your claim makes sense. You can give statistics and facts, and you can give an example, an anecdote, to show, well, this happened, so therefore it'll happen again, for example. Which type of source of support is best?
Depends on what you're trying to appeal to.
Exactly. Yeah, and it depends on the situation, depends on a lot of things. Tell me an example when appeal to authority is a good plan.
I think in the book they mentioned someone, like, if you were like to go to like a newspaper or something, somebody who has a history of like being on point, I believe it. So, I don't know, something like that. I know I read something about a newspaper.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's a common way to support a fact in a newspaper is to quote, because reporters are gathering their facts from all these experts, and so they quote them, and that's maybe their primary way of supporting it. That would make sense. Okay.
I guess if you're trying to appeal to ethos, then you would use like an authoritative figure.
To add credibility. Yeah. Yeah, and you can help your ethos with any one of these to help them trust your paper. But if you're talking about who your authorities you're referring to, that is a strong way to, you know, build that your authorities ethos, and that'll help build yours as well. What else is appeal to authority a good idea? What if you're explaining, you know, the physics involved in a thermonuclear explosion or a new medical procedure? Would it be a good idea to explain it out? Well, you see the metacarpal, you know, phalanges, you know, and your sternocleidomastoid all come together, especially when there's an overabundance of triglycerides in conjunction with the dopamine released. You see, that's too hard for most. It's hard. You have to give like a whole textbook sometimes to explain the background. So maybe explain to an authority who are like, fine, if Dr. Jones says so, that's good enough for me. I don't want to understand all that. Okay, any other ones you can think of? Appropriate times to appeal to authority?
Well, sometimes there's like a conflict or something, like maybe in a work or school setting, would that?
Yeah, that makes sense. Where people respect someone else's opinion, for example, or where it's the boss.
The boss.
Oh, I see. So it's like it's his decision. He said, "Get back to work, so do it." And I said, "Oh, good point. I hadn't thought of that." I was just thinking of something similar. When you're 4 years old and your 2-year-old sister doesn't want to do something, you're like, "Mom said you have to."
Yeah.
So yeah, appeal to the ultimate authority. Yeah, good point. Okay, when is it a good idea to use reason, or to explain your assertion, your claim, so that people accept it?
Maybe if it's a topic that's not like commonly known.
Good. And they need to understand it. No matter who said it, maybe there aren't great authorities. Maybe it's new and they need to get a sense for it. Because it's one thing if you say it and they're like, okay, fine. But if they don't understand, but if they understand it, they'll be more convinced and more motivated if that's trying to get them to do something. Oh, yeah.
Seems like that would be the one that brings out most opinions from people, would be reasons and explaining. When you explain yourself to somebody, you have to kind of persuade them to think the way that you're thinking. For facts, you just state the facts and they need to accept them or not accept them.
Yeah.
I don't know, it seems like that one's a little more long and drawn out with trying to persuade somebody to value your opinion.
That makes sense, and it kind of depends then on how much it's your opinion and how much is something that can be understood, maybe. Yeah, but that could make sense. If you're explaining something and they have no reason to doubt you, they just need to understand it, then, yeah, but yeah, good point. Any other thoughts on when that one's best? How about statistics and facts? When is that a really good one to use?
Well, I think it's good to use it intermittently, like,
True, along with the other ones,
Yeah.
for example.
because it could be evidence for
Yeah.
multiple things.
Yeah, because if you give reason and people say, oh, that makes sense, but is there anything we don't know? Then you get some statistics and they're like, oh, well, yeah. People tend to trust numbers because they seem objective. They don't have that personality, the opinion built in so much, right?
That was actually in my paper. I discussed that in the article that I read. It had like 0 numbers in it, but it would mention a lot of studies and be like, well, it found a majority, but it like never said the number, and that really bothered me. Like I felt like it needed more numbers and statistics because it referred to them without actually saying what they were.
I have that same reaction with a lot of news articles. A majority of the, and I'm like, yeah, but how much? Like the other day.
51 or 99.
Yeah.
What percentage?
I was listening to some NPR news report about how our atmosphere just hit 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide. And it used to be, and I'm like, yeah, but what did it used to be? You know, so finally they're like, oh, less than 100, about 100 years ago, it was 320. So I finally started, you know, but you need context to make sense to see how it all fits together. Yeah, good. Anything else with facts and stats? But
Sometimes you have to be careful on where they're getting the statistics too.
Yeah.
I just took statistics and they explained that whole process to me, and now I don't really think about it the same way.
yeah, I bet.
So, like if it's like a voluntary poll, like if people volunteer their information, you'll probably get more people that are opinionated about that topic to write in rather than selecting random people that.
Right. Facebook polls and all,
Yeah.
pretty worthless.
I mean, if they're opinionated, then they're going to voice their opinion, and it's going to make everything look left-sided or right-sided or whatever.
I don't know, it depends on the kinds of friends you have. Because really, you're taking a social sample. They are people. They have diverse opinions unless you brainwash all your friends to think the same way. And then, yeah, your poll's going to be skewed. But
And it depends what you're asking. If you're asking favorite flavor ice cream, that's one thing. But if you're asking, you know, that are splitting, you know, gay rights, abortion, that kind of stuff, gun control.
Why is that not a valid poll, though? You're asking society a
They
question.
didn't say it's not a valid poll, they just said you wanted.
Well, he said it was worthless. I heard the word worthless come out of his mouth.
Yes, I said it was worthless, but by worthless what I mean is that it's not a statistically controllable thing to get statistics. It's not reliable. It seems seems kind of logical that it might be, but in fact, the way it spreads out, you don't get a sample. You know when they do the phone polls, like for the presidential election kind of stuff, they have to gather all this information, like how many Democrats, how many this and that, so that they can intentionally skew their results to fix, you know, the straight numbers aren't reliable kind of stuff. So I don't understand statistics as well as Elliot does, who just took this class.
Well, it was like you take a population and then you get a sample of that population, and then from that sample is where you're getting your information from. So if you kind of pick and choose who, like, for example, toothpaste, when they say like 9 out of 10 doctors prefer this toothpaste, is because they selected which doctors they wanted to pick out of that study.
Right, so professional polls are skewed that way, then what makes Facebook polls any less valuable? If marketing specifically targets people they want to give them the answers that they need, then why is Facebook any different if you're asking a pool of people who have something in common with you for their opinion?
I think it's because you can't measure who the respondents were, so that you could skew it to match the actual population that this sample group is trying to represent. Is that accurate?
You don't have a control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you had a more detailed Facebook poll where you could find out who's answering and stuff, maybe you could.
Isn't that the point of Facebook? You have background information on all the people that are answering.
Yes, but when you write an app to take that poll, you can't download that information.
Okay, so now we're talking about marketing people who are asking people that poll, as opposed to you as a friend asking people that poll, which you have access to.
Oh, if I want to know my friend's opinions, I can find that out. Yeah. So I meant as a country.
So your population would be your friends. Is what you're saying.
Which which is a population. I really don't understand the conflict here. I'm trying to
These trends
understand.
may not be as
It's
diverse.
not as.
Maybe a stats class would answer that better for you.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to look it up, I'm sure there's some webpage out there that talks about statistical significance, or what's the right term to look for to explain what makes a valid poll?
Well, there's just different polls. Like a telephone poll would not be as accurate. It's just accuracy is kind of what you're shooting for. So like a census where it goes
In other
out
words,
to everybody.
accurate representation of the whole of the
Yeah.
country. kind of thing.
Also, what
Yeah,
you're
so-
wanting to apply that stat to, like whether it's the nation or a
Not
smaller
everyone's on
community,
Facebook.
needs to be an accurate representation.
A cool thing that was pointed out to us in my class in 1010 or whatever the class was before this. The teacher gave us 2 articles about the same thing, but it was 2 different people and it had statistics in there. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was highlighting, some plant with atomic waste or something like that. And one of them presented, this many people died as a result of this, and then it was this many people, are the ones working there. So it's like, it's also, stats can be awesome, but if you don't have the full picture, reading 2 different articles, you get 2 different feelings because you have 2 different things. So stats and facts you can totally get them, you can pick which ones you want to use and the context you're going to use them to to either represent accurately or to only give half the story.
Yeah.
So beyond just the actual number, the way you apply it can totally change it.
Yeah. So it's good to have that critical awareness when you see these stats to still, don't make up your mind too quickly necessarily. One more answer for you, Heather, on the Facebook polls is, let's say it says something like, how many people think that, some gun control, for example, think. The type of people who are more likely to like or share to put in their vote, or take the survey at all, are people who feel really strongly. But I bet there's a big population in the center who just don't care to voice their opinion and enter the controversy. So there's one more reason why you don't get an accurate sample. Yeah.
And the way that you write your question out can influence them too.
Good point.
If you kind of write it out in a negative, like you kind of voice the question as if you're against gun control, then they're gonna maybe be influenced more towards that response that appease you.
It gets so subtle
Yeah.
that they track NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox voters on the exit polls and stuff, and they determine, I read this in one of Malcolm Gladwell's books, Tipping Point maybe, they determined that just because Brian Williams smiled a little bit more when he said the name Reagan or whoever, the study was on that point, that even a little tiny indication like that seemed to have an effect on the outcome. So gathering information, it can be really, really technical. So yeah. All right, any other good comments on using stats? Yes, Jessica?
You can use them to manipulate, your audience.
Oh yeah, you definitely can.
You can choose the ones that you like. That's
Right.
what you're trying to say. Like you said, there's a little different studies and stuff, so you can choose the ones that
Right.
you want them to think.
So in your papers, if you give a statistic that's against your proposition, that'll make you seem more balanced and really can help your ethos, because people at least believe you're being fair. Hopefully you are. Yeah. And another thing, you mentioned about manipulating people. We think of these numbers as really objective and, logos, no pathos. That's not true, is it? Say 90% of children, that can be an emotional kind of thing. So yeah, that can be strong. Good. When is it a good idea to give, or a bad idea, to give a story or an anecdote, an example to support your claim? So stories are bad for proving cause and effect, but they're great for helping people relate. All right, how about warrants? Somebody give me a definition of warrant.
How your evidence supports your claim, why they're connected.
Good. Do you think it's possible that, a smart, intelligent university student would ever make a claim and then put some evidence, like a quote in, and they don't have anything to do with each other? Do you think that could ever happen? It's obvious as I even asked that question. Yeah, sometimes it happens. And sometimes like you'll put this quote in this kind of dense and hard, you have to think about it to process it anyway, and so a lot of people won't realize they have nothing to do with each other. So first you'll want to double check that. But then if you have a warrant, that explains it, and if they don't mind that, it'll help you catch that as well. Let me give you a couple quick examples to practice on then. Man should go to Mars. What kind of claim is that?
Policy.
Policy. We should do this. We should do that, right? Tell me some evidence. What's a reason? What's some kind of support why we should go to Mars?
Find water.
All right. Because we're curious. We want to know. We want to understand it or something. All right. And now tell me why understanding Mars' ecology means that we should go there. In fact, does it mean we should go there?
Yeah, to know if there was life there at one point, like,
Okay. So to find that out, does that mean we have to go there to find that out? Or can we just send a cute little robot?
send a cute little robot.
Okay, so we could do that. So see, that's actually, thanks, that was a great example of you make a claim, you have some evidence, and maybe you need some more evidence, you know? It's not an invalid evidence, but it's not a complete one. So tell me some more support. Why mankind should go to Mars?
Overpopulation.
Right. And who shall we send? How about the people who like Barry Manilow?
Yeah, they are going to open a colony there, I heard, in 2020.
They're sending 4
Yeah.
people in like 2024, and it's a one-way trip. They're not coming back.
I heard that too. Isn't that crazy?
That is scary.
Thousands of people want to go.
What a great what? What a great resume line. You could use that at a party. I went to Mars. I guess you couldn't. Could you?
They're not coming back, so.
Yeah, the party of what, 40 people?
Yeah. Kind of stuff. Boy, everybody will be your Facebook friends, though. Find out what's happening. Oh, you met some aliens today? He came in a blue box. What? Okay, tell me another evidence to support that mankind should go to Mars.
Explore the universe.
Okay, so we should go there to explore the universe. Why? Now, tell me the warrant. Explain why it's important for us to go places and explore the universe.
To understand our Earth's ecosystem better.
Okay, good. Or because we have this inner drive, this insatiable curiosity, because we get all these benefits. We invent Velcro and Tang. Oh, I guess that came before it, you know. Microwaves and pens that write upside down.
You could say the same reason why we went to the moon is the same reason why we want to go to Mars, to put the U.S. superior nation in the world or something like that.
Oh,
that
right,
was
right.
competition back then.
Yeah, preeminence. That was very important back then, especially. Yeah. Okay, so those are some good reasons. Let's try this one. There should be a law against bullying. Let's have to enunciate bullying, or I was like, why shouldn't you go bowling?
It's also a policy argument.
Good, yes, I forgot to ask that. There should be a law against bullying policy. So, support, give me some support for that claim. We should outlaw bullying.
There's been suicides related to bullying.
Okay, and why does victim suicides mean we should outlaw it?
Because bullying is a cause, is a potential cause for it.
Okay, and why does that mean we should outlaw it?
We'll save lives.
Yeah, and why do we care about saving lives? All right,
We're human.
at some point we have to say, fine, we accept that, right? Okay, good. Okay, give me another support for outlawing bullying.
Could I do the why we shouldn't outlaw
Sure.
it? I was bullied a lot when I was younger, like a lot.
Yeah.
And it made me who I am today.
Okay.
And so by being bullied, you know, I wasn't suicidal, but I was very depressed, and there was a lot of repercussions from it. But I grew from it, and my personality developed, and now you all can hear me, and I'm outspoken and annoying.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So does that make you the exception or the rule?
I think it's,
See, because that was an anecdotal, wasn't it? It was like,
Yeah.
this worked for you. Now we can extrapolate and say that same for many people, but
yeah. But if I was writing this essay, like, well, if I was writing this, for example, in, I don't know, for family members or friends, something that depends on your audience also,
Yeah.
when you enter an example or something. But for me, personally, it made me who I was, and I don't know if I would be where I am at today if it didn't
Yeah.
happen.
See, I was bullied in middle school. I became the bully in high school.
Yeah.
That's what that made me into.
Yeah, so it's all just relative.
Yeah, like I said, you either are the exception or you're the rule, and I think you're the exception. The rule is that people take it negatively, it impacts them negatively, and some people manage to escape that vicious cycle, but not everybody.
Yeah. So like I said, I think it depends on who your audience is, maybe.
or maybe we need to adjust our claim to say we should outlaw bullying to a point, but that doesn't mean we can get rid of all conflict and something like that.
Along with not outlawing bullying, I don't know if this would be evidence or warrant. Sometimes I get confused on like which is which, but but like it's just not practical. Like how would you monitor and how would you even define bullying? Is it cyberbullying? Is it like physical contact, like getting in physical
It's
fights?
like
Is
assault. How do you define assault? You can outlaw assault. It has been outlawed, and there are definitions for it. It'll be hard, but it can be done.
So maybe implementing different laws and having consequences of certain things, or
Like first-degree murder, second-degree
yeah,
murder,
like maybe they do
manslaughter.
that. There's
Yeah.
after bullying.
How are you gonna enforce it? It happens with minors more times than not.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Dealing with
How many? Okay, from every
elementary and
Is
middle
that a
school
solution? Like just sticking kids in juvenile? Is
It may
that?
not be the best solution, but it is a solution.
And there's always someone listening to that happen. It's not like it's between one and another person.
Maybe make a bullying rehab. Like
Bullying rehab.
But then at the same point, when you do stuff like outlawing bullying, then you go into like our constitutional rights and whatnot. You know, it's like having too much government. You
What was
know.
it that my teacher that once said, your right to swing your fist ends where my face begins. My rights are just as valid as yours, but when your rights start to infringe upon mine, then you're violating the law. And I think bullying does that. Whether they're juveniles or not, they're taking their freedom of speech too far, and they're infringing on other people's rights to live.
I don't know. I was always the bully, so I don't.
So you don't mind too much.
Yeah.
They say a lot of the bullies are victims in other scenarios, so I don't know.
So what about like hazing? Because hazing is a little bit worse than bullying, right? Because I
That
could maybe
depends.
see.
It's
Outlawing
bullying, but
hazing.
by a specific demographic. Hazing is the definition of bullying in sports.
Or when you're new
unfortunately,
somewhere, a rite of passage kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between bullying and teasing?
It's just
Yeah.
How can I
question of
say
its
that I was
strength.
teasing
I think
her?
every person defines it
That's like
differently,
the
which is
definition of
why I
sexual
said it would
harassment
be
and
difficult
flirting.
to monitor
Yeah.
and enforce because it's so difficult to
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
So obviously you guys have
Well, how
grasped
do you
the
prove it?
complexity of this issue.
Yeah, that would be a really
I was
hard
just having
essay.
fun. Like, I was just playing
You
with
could
it.
you could lay down some parameters
Yeah.
that could be tweaked
But
later.
getting your
Like,
point
that's my
totally
point, is you
across
can't
and like,
define it.
Yeah.
That's
I
why
can
sexual
define-
harassment is a crime. You can't define
Well,
it.
because
It's
you
difficult to
define
define.
sexual harassment. You haven't defined what the
I think
difference
we
between
lost
teasing
our-
and bullying.
What do you
Yeah.
define sexual harassment as?
How did we start talking about sexual
Yeah, I know.
harassment? We're going to another topic.
That's
You're
all right.
trying to define
This
what
was a
it
pretty good
is.
conversation and complexity, so I let it
Between
go.
bullying and sexual harassment.
Because that's how it evolves into.
Do you feel like she's
being
harassing you
intense,
now?
To the adult place.
You have to ask her to stop now before you can sue
Just
her.
arrest her. She's a bully.
Oh, unfortunately, it's not against the law, so. Okay, do you want to do one more example? I think you guys have a pretty good grasp on this, so let's save more time for actually our peer review today. Let me give you an option. I've got a couple of videos and essays we could go over, and we could practice doing a rhetorical analysis on it, just to clarify what is rhetorical analysis and what's not. Do you want to do that? And we can practice making complete arguments with that.
Well, we just demonstrated we're already there.
Demonstrate what?
We were critiquing each other's arguments just now. I think we're already there.
Yeah. Well, for the rhetorical analysis assignment, I want to make it really clear, like one paragraph contains A, B, C, kind of in there, or C, W,
Well, let's
E
do it
in
because I
there.
think it will help us get a better peer review.
Okay. Would you rather start with a video or an essay? A video is a little more entertaining. It's a little easier to do as a critique. Paper would be a little more closely applicable to what you will be doing for your assignment. So based on that, do you have a preference? Video?
Video.
It is.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You don't talk about claims, but you should also, like, there's the thesis too, which is that separate than the claim? Like, that's your main claim, and then you make claims to support your thesis.
Yeah, well put. And that's exactly what you'll do in the rhetorical analysis too, is you're going to make one main claim, one thesis claim about logos or pathos or ethos of your article. And then that'll be like one paragraph, and then you'll have at least 3 other paragraphs, at least 3 other arguments that support your main claim. And also, as you do those 3 other supports, make sure you get 3 different types of support. So if you say it was confusing because they use big words, if that's your main claim, then all you can use is say, see, they use this big word, see, they use that big word, see, use this other big word. That's all the same type of evidence. If you say it was confusing, then you can say, 1, they use big words. 2, humongous paragraphs. 3, bad organization. 4, you can give all these different ways that made it. So you want to get your main claim to be general enough that you can support it with different types of evidence, but not so general that it's boring and useless and not even interesting. So if you say the article had good logos, see, that's way too broad, boring. Be a little more concise than that. And on uoflife.com/UVU, I put some little examples for that as well. So let me bring this up. Brought my laptop because this other computer is so loud. The fan always bothers me. All right, so if you go and click on rhetorical analysis here, then it tells you just what I just told you about. Should I make that bigger? Bigger than that, or is that okay?
That's okay.
All right. So make one claim about your academics paper, logos, pathos, or ethos. Be specific enough to be interesting, but general enough you can differentiate. So the article had good logos, too general. The article used big words, too specific. The article remained interesting by helping its readers relate. That's about right, because now you can get different ways that the authors did that. Help the readers to relate. Also, please include in your main claim a value judgment about how it affected you as a reader, or how it affected readers in general if you're judging for other readers. Did it make it more effective or not? Include that in your main claim. And like I say here, you don't have to use the word effective if it's obvious, like it kept readers' interest. That obviously is more effective. But have some kind of value judgment where you're evaluating, say, if this made it better or worse. And then make at least 3 arguments, each in its own paragraph, supporting your main claim. Have a claim, support, and warrant in each one. And don't begin with the support or evidence. And then there's some examples we can look at either in a second. But first, you want a video, so let's watch a video. Do you want politics or education video?
Politics.
Heather spoke up first, so we'll get politics. Did we watch this last time, John Stewart?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did we rhetorically analyze it
Yeah.
also? Oh, we've already done this. Dang it. All right.
We're looking for claims, evidences, and warrants. Warrants, but we just discussed like what did he do well and
The logo seems.
Okay.
yeah, like what was logos, equals, pathos, that kind of thing.
You're right. So we did a rhetorical analysis, but we didn't focus on arguments that way.
It might be easier to listen the second time and look for those particular things.
Good point.
I agree.
All right, let's do it then. Because just like academic articles, sometimes you have to watch Jon Stewart twice to catch everything and fully understand it. Oh, I just realized that I did not bring a sound cable.
Oh, darn.
Let's see how loud my computer is. This is probably not going to work very well then.
Why are twice as many people choosing Verizon over any other carrier? Many choose us because we have the largest 4G LTE network.
Can you hear that?
Others because of our reputation for reliability. Or maybe it's because we received J.D. Power Associates Customer Service Award 4 times in a row. In the end,
Look at all that evidence. Do you believe it?
but one choice. It's powerful. Verizon.
And it's one-sided.
It's powerful. Yeah. Has some good points there.
What did the president do? When it all went down in Benghazi, the administration facing the election went into panic mode, wanted to contain it, don't send in the military, don't blow this into a bigger thing that's going to be. This Obama administration, in this case, was cowardly, duplicitous, and they sacrificed American lives for politics. You know what? Actually, outrage justified.
Remember, you're looking for one main logos, pathos, or ethos claim.
For the President of the United States to consciously allow Americans to die to protect his own political chances is damning, and your level of anger is in fact justified. As is the question we've been asking now for 8 months.
Where's the media outrage on Libya and Benghazi? Why is this story not getting more coverage in the mainstream media?
Where is the outrage?
Yes! I came out of nowhere. Where is the outrage over Obama's cover-up, which we know is indeed the case?
If that indeed was the case.
If that indeed was the case. Wait a minute. If that indeed was the case. See, I think I know what's going on here. You're at DEF CON, this definitely happened, not DEF CON, if that indeed was the case. Do you see what I'm saying? I think that's why people might not be outraged, because they think you're saying you're not sure yet.
What if the president lied about Benghazi, and what if in fact he knew about this much earlier? What if it turns out that their lives might have been saved?
What if it turns out that Benghazi was the death trap?
If there has indeed been a cover-up,
If he did nothing?
if he lied,
If that's the case,
if that's the case, John, that's outrageous. Then that is the shame of America.
The consequences, of course, would be significant, including possible impeachment if he lied.
Yes! If! And if dingleberries were diamonds, I could open a King Jewelers in my pants. If! I think I see the problem here. You can't understand why everyone else isn't as outraged as you, when it's because the rest of us aren't sure if what you're saying is true. And to be quite frank, you do have somewhat of a history of hysteria. Not that you've necessarily blown things out of proportion with this president or created highly emotional narratives concerning this president. I do remember this salute airing on Hannity just 100 days into his presidency.
So help you God, so help me God.
Congratulations, Mr.
What do you think a stimulus is?
I want him to fail. Even President Obama admits America's arrogance.
President, bow
Before the Saudi king.
God bless the United States of America.
Months in, you had him as Damien in The Omen. Beelzebub Mountain have cried wolf before. And after 8 months of intensive investigation, you should be able to better state your case than this from yesterday.
It sounds like what you've described, it sounds like there's been a cover-up, but what were they trying to cover up?
Well, again, this is why we're fighting for the truth. None of this would have come out if the Oversight Committee, if Darrell Issa, if our committee didn't continue to pursue this.
You have no idea!
If what you're saying is true, and it's an important question, if what you're saying is true, if the president let America die for political reasons, then by God, bring us the evidence and we will grab the pitchforks and torches along with you. But remember, that game goes both ways. Let me try. In 2011, the State Department requested funding for worldwide security protection and upgrades, money that could perhaps have gone to protect Benghazi. The Republicans, like Darrell Issa, who's heading up this committee, voted to cut that funding. Maybe because of political reasons in an election year to make the president look weak, thus sacrificing Americans for political gains. Did that happen?
If that's the case, John, that's outrageous.
All right, did that help, watching it again?
Yeah.
Good. Give me a claim then. And then we'll practice supporting, we'll tweak it to get it not too general, not too specific, and then we'll practice doing a couple of supports for it.
So one ethos that I caught like towards the end was where he mentioned that the politician who first voted against cut the funding for protection, worldwide protection for politicians that could have been used to prevent Benghazi.
Good. And he showed that the Republican was doing the same thing. And why is that an ethos thing?
I don't know, just say by the credibility, like how he's mentioned that, you're saying this, but then you did this before.
Oh, I see. So it was attacking the ethos of the Republicans.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. True. Is that, by the way, is that a good reason? Like just because Republicans have done stupid political things that we shouldn't follow up now? I don't think so. I think we should, everybody who does stupid political things should be accountable.
Say like Jon Stewart uses humor to like destroy, say, conservative media's like ethos or credibility on the subject.
Good, and that's nice. Yeah, I was just that's good. And that I think that's specific enough that it's interesting to point out the ethos, hurting the ethos, and specifically, even more specifically, using humor to destroy their ethos. And it's not too specific because we can list several different ways he does that, right? So now give me an argument for one way that Jon Stewart uses humor to destroy, to undermine Republican ethos.
Facial expressions.
Okay. Do you remember one in particular?
Well, he was like, like he is always doing stuff like that, or like, I guess not necessarily facial expressions, but more of such as a video, yeah,
Dramatic
appearance.
Yeah. Taking on different affects, the Jewish mother speaking kind of like this, and all that. So think of a specific instance you remember from here, and then explain to me how that was used to undermine the Republican.
Well, when he, with, large gestures and a loud voice was like, outraged, then it was
like, yes!
So it pointed out like how over the top that they were being.
Okay. Okay, yeah, good. So when they first throw all this clip, where's the outrage? He's like, yes! Oh, where'd all that come from? Just like showed him caught up in it. Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, give me another one. Lane.
I just want to comment that, the humor in that, to me, kind of destroys his own credibility.
Yeah.
I think it's like Saturday Night Live, where you're taking all this out of context. What's real here and what's not.
Yeah. And if you're not familiar with Jon Stewart, I assume you're not.
No.
Then you don't know how to distinguish do you? So yeah, that's
How
totally
big is the
legitimate.
show? Is it a news show? Is it a comedy show? What is it?
Yeah, and his and the Colbert Report, they're both. They really discuss real issues, but they use, but you have to be familiar with it to kind of get it. Yeah.
Well, a claim, I know we're talking about evidence, but a claim I was thinking about is shows like these can actually be damaging to the American population because so many people watch shows like that to get
Their
the
news. Yeah.
It's like you're missing out on a lot of ideas and also a lot of other news.
And to get a more balanced, multiple perspectives kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
because it's like that shows like that don't highlight everything that's going on in the world, and then when they do focus on something, it's fairly one-sided depending on what right or left wing, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. And Colbert pretends to be conservative, but he's not really.
And so it's like, I think sometimes shows like that, if you're aware of the situation already, shows like that you can enjoy, and it almost makes you not cry when you think about politics. But people who go to those directly for their news, I don't think it's good for them.
FYI, about a year ago, apparently there was a survey that showed that people who watch Jon Stewart are more educated, better informed on news than Fox viewers. But most people who watch Jon Stewart are the kind of people you just described who also pay attention to the news. I would think kind of stuff. So, anyway.
Otherwise, you wouldn't really get the jokes if you didn't
Yeah,
know
good
what was
point.
going on.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Okay, one more instance of how has humor undermined Republican ethos. How about the way he quotes all of them as saying the things to make his point, to illustrate his point.
He makes them look silly with like the montage and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
They kind of cuts them short. He just focuses on the if and
right.
You have no idea what that whole each of those clips were even about. And he just kind of focused on.
And they could have been out of context.
Yeah, it could have been from some different interview about some different topic.
I actually noticed that this time. Did you notice the recency? Did you notice the dates, the recency of his evidence? There were a couple May 7th, so within the week of when this one was shot, maybe the day, I don't know. But most of them were October and a couple Novembers. So there's a lot more evidence since then. So I don't know, are people saying if anymore? Besides those two people from May? I don't know.
Well,
maybe it really was out of context.
And also, he's towards the end when he made his claim and he gave his evidence right at the end when he got serious there, and he said, well, what if? So his face could have very well been put in that clip. Does that make sense? They could have, because the way he said it, he was being serious. He's saying, well, what if? And let him give me a chance and I'll say it. You very well could have taken that clip of him saying, well, what if? And thrown it in the video, and he would have been in there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, context.
Yeah. We've done a good job of, we made a good claim, we gave lots of evidence, and I forgot to do warrants. So tell me, pick one of your evidences and give me a warrant for it. So let's go with, he makes humor, he does big expressions, and like, yes! Okay, why does that undermine Republican ethos?
There's no sarcasm of it.
Yeah. And I guess you already said that, didn't you, Kimberly? You said it made him look ridiculous, because he'd been ridiculous.
It points out, his exaggeration points out that they're being over the top.
Okay, good. So I guess on that one we had an ethos. What was one of our other ones? Other evidences.
Well, just like everybody said, he cuts everyone short.
Okay, and maybe uses them out of context.
Yeah, so a warrant could be something like, all of his evidence and all of his support is 3 words of an entire, paragraph.
And so he's only using the part that's convenient to his point, whereas if you took a longer clip. All right, Chelsea, tell us what you learned, what you got out of peer review today.
In my group specifically, we learned a lot, I learned a lot about things that I did not see, because I'm so familiar with myself that I almost ignore my flaws. So my group was able to really point out things that I didn't pick up on because I'm so used to it. So I don't even notice it, because I write the way I speak, and so I say so a ton, and that's just pointless. And we also learned a lot about making sure you understand the assignment. It was like the professor always talks about, we might, reference back to just the good old summary, but it's always important to make sure that you read through what the assignment is about, so that way you can make sure you hit those bullet points and stay on topic, because you can still have a great paper, but could have nothing to do with the assignment. We also learned a lot about making sure you tie everything together, because you can make a lot of good points, but if you don't get those points all combined into this circle, they're not going to do you any good. They're going to do more harm. So that's some stuff we learned.
I should do this more often. That was good. That was good.